Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of S.H.I.E.L.D. Discussions. I'm Captain Logan.
I'm Dan.
And Dan and I are about to embark on a journey of epic proportions. We're going to be talking about S.H.I.E.L.D. every time it comes out. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. on ABC, and we're going to be starting, obviously, with the pilot, because that's the first episode that came out, Dan. So, we're gonna do this like we do Arrow discussions, but we're streamlining both shows. I've come up with kind of a new format for this, and I think people are gonna enjoy what we have in store for you. So we're gonna start with a general overview. First of all, just as always, spoiler warning. If you've not watched this show, you probably shouldn't listen to this yet, unless you just want to know everything about it without watching it for whatever reason. We're going to kind of go in depth and discuss a lot of nook and crannies and things about this. We're gonna talk about what we liked, we're gonna talk about what we didn't like, we're gonna talk about what we think might happen later on in the show, and all of that kind of stuff. So, Dan, first of all, just right out the gate, did you think this was a good idea for a series when you first heard about it?
I think it's a good idea to do this as a television show, if anything, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe first, because you don't have to have a gigantic budget to do it. I have some reservations about what this looks like in relation to the movies, which we'll get into when we, talk about it further. But I think premise-wise, it's not bad. As long as they don't get too ambitious and try to do things outside their budget later on.
The big reservation and criticism I heard a lot before the show started, and from people who just are refusing to watch it, is, well, I don't really care about anything in the Marvel Universe if we can't see superheroes. This is kind of, a lot of people, right, feel like it's kind of lame, that it's like, okay, well, we don't have the budget to have those characters and do them on screen, so we have to resort to S.H.I.E.L.D. What I really love about the pilot here is, and this is a very Whedon thing to do, is that he attacks that criticism and that reservation head on with what he's doing thematically in the show, because the series right out the gate, I mean, this is what the first episode is about, but I feel like it's what the whole show is going to be about, is the idea of human beings feeling like they're not good enough anymore because they're being replaced by these superpowered characters and by aliens and by gods. And so he's addressing that head on. I think that's very clever, but I think it's also a smart, poignant kind of thing to do.
And it wasn't done in a really overt way, I don't think. I don't think it was done in such a way where he's like, and this is what we're going to be tackling in this show today, folks. I mean, I think it was a definite thematic through line, not just through the pilot, but I think it's left open enough that you're right. That's probably going to be one of the major themes explored throughout the show. I suppose we can get more into that. We get into the big idea section, but yeah, that's something that I definitely picked up on. I agree.
So just as a pilot, when I look at pilots, I always like to answer this question first, and that is, does it have pilotitis? And the way I define pilotitis is it's when you have the first episode of a show that isn't telling a story so much as trying to introduce you to everything, where the introduction of the characters and the things that are going to matter in the show is kind of taking over, and it doesn't, cumbersome, and it doesn't actually tell a good story right away. I feel like this is one of Whedon's best pilots for not having that problem.
I agree. I think even if this is a avenue for Whedon to introduce all of these characters, there definitely is a through line with Mike Peterson, who is a guest star. He is the African American character who has superpowers in this, that the S.H.I.E.L.D. team is dealing with. This is their first sort of a super human threat, I suppose, that they have to deal with. And he definitely has a character arc that he goes through. It begins and ends in the episode. So I agree with you. I think this had a story to tell, and it leaves it open very well for future episodes.
One of the difficulties I always had with the pilot for Firefly, which I like a lot more now, having seen the rest of that show, is that it felt like it was trying so hard to be about every single character that I was kind of thrust into it in such a way where I had a difficult time latching on to anything and understanding what I was looking at and why I was supposed to care. This doesn't have that problem, because it focuses. It focuses mostly on, as far as protagonists. even though obviously our pseudo antagonist, because it's a Whedon thing, so it's more complicated than that. He has a little bit. He definitely has a character arc, but so does Sky, and she's kind of the character that we're really kind of thrown into her head as being the I think kind of our view of from the real world as regular people into this government program in order to try to decide for ourselves along with her if they're morally dubious or if they are actually a helpful heroic kind of force. And so I think that the show does a really good job of, and obviously Coulson is really important too, and I think that the show does a really good job of throwing us into this universe without holding our hands too much. So a lot of the supporting characters that will, I'm sure, all end up being in an important giant ensemble sort of cast later on are mostly just functional here. They don't really have to have huge major character moments, but I think it's also trying to seed them so that we can at least see how we might care about them as the show progresses.
I agree. There were a lot of things I saw, especially in like Agent Ward, like character aspects with him, that I can definitely see playing out in an interesting way in the future. How like there's little hints about he's the sort of guy, unlike Coulson, where he always believes that the ends justify the means. He talks a lot about how he's looking for world peace, and he doesn't necessarily view individual human beings involved in the missions that he has to undertake as lives worth saving. He views people as sort of dispensable
Yeah,
initially, and I like that there is a character like that, especially in a spy show, because that's what people in this profession are usually portrayed as being in a lot of other things. But you have this moral arbiter in Coulson who sort of walks that line between the morally ambiguous sort of thing that you would have to do as a spy, and kind of keeps everybody in check. He's like the father figure and the glue that holds the team together, which I think is great.
yeah. I mean, he has two huge moments that prove to Sky that S.H.I.E.L.D. is more complicated, if nothing else, than she thought it was. And I was surprised to find myself actually buying that she would work with them by the end of the show. Because, going through it, when it seemed like that was the direction they were going to go, I was like, wow, she was like working with this group trying to take down Shield, and by the end she's working with them. How could they possibly make me okay with that? And I felt like they did because Coulson goes to such extremes to show her some transparency. First in actually injecting Ward with the truth serum instead of her, because that's not about finding out what she knows. It's about, well, it is, but he does it in the right way. I couldn't believe that. I thought that was great. We're going to show you how transparent we are. You can ask him anything because I'm going to let you find out everything he knows, and then you'll trust us so that you'll tell us what we want to know. And then the other thing is that he is that at the end of the show, he is willing to risk the lives of other people to instead of just straight up killing Mike.
Yes, exactly. I thought that was a very interesting scene, and I wrote down as my favorite line or exchange, whatever, piece of dialogue in the show. For later on, when we talk about this is when Coulson says to Ward, "Nobody is a nobody." Uh,
Yep, I wrote that one down too. Yeah,
that was one of my favorite lines and just speaks to Coulson's character immensely. I loved how we got both the Coulson who's confident and competent and knows what he's doing, but at the same time, he's that eccentric, extreme kind of personality and like optimist almost to a fault at times. Because like we see Coulson being very effective at being this moral arbiter and thinking and convincing people that Shield is a good thing, but the thing that I love about this show and what it nails about what I love about the Shield organization in general is that nobody knows as much as they think they know.
nobody.
Uh, it's very interesting that everyone in the show is to varying degrees misinformed about everything that's going on in the world.
Yeah,
And I think that's one of the big themes that runs through the show is trust. We live in a world where it's so hard to identify who you can trust, and the what sort of faith you can place in people, and are you getting taken advantage of? And we'll talk more about the organization that S.H.I.E.L.D is associated with later on when I do my predictions and who I think that organization is. But that speaks to that theme if it plays out the way I think it does very very well too. So I'm just very impressed with their ability to make this just this big web of lies and secrets, and it's just perfect.
I love how well the story stands on its own.
Mhm.
I mean, like it's setting stuff up obviously because it's going to be a TV show, and obviously there's a lot of things we don't know about Coulson and what happened to him in Avengers exactly. But I appreciated that you could just sit down and watch this, and if you don't watch any more of the show, you can still enjoy
Oh yeah, oh, yeah,
that
absolutely.
story. So that's really nice. So let's for overview here, let's talk about a couple other kind of larger things. What do you think about the production values on the show?
The thing that I sort of resist about the production value is they do mention that their tech is a little bit older than the stuff they were working with in Avengers, but it just doesn't look as impressive as this kind of stuff Shield is working with in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is a little disappointing, just because you want Shield to feel like a cutting edge spy organization. You don't want to have them feel like they're this archaic. They're working with archaic, outdated technology, but I suppose they have. To work on a budget, so I can understand that. As long as the stories are good, the special effects are something I can overlook to a degree.
That's a fair criticism. I gotta say, it looked better than I thought it was going to actually, and I didn't expect the airplane.
I'm
I
glad they
thought
have an airplane because that hints to me, I think, that they're going to have, or at least try to have an international flair to this, which is something that a spy show requires, in my opinion. I think you need to have different locations. And I mean, if this was just like the city blocks that we saw in the pilot and the plane interior, that'd be kind of, it get
yeah,
tiresome after a while, you know?
here's the thing, it's not as grandiose as what we saw in Avengers, obviously. So that's more of a consistency problem with the rest of the universe than it is with what the actual show looks like. Because you mentioned special effects, I thought the effects for this on a TV budget looked really good. I thought that
Yes.
like when Mike hits the ground and creates the cracks there and all of that, I thought that looked good. I
It
thought
did look good.
the explosion with the building looked good. I don't know, it's big enough for me, and I really liked what the flying car looked like at the end. I thought that looked fantastic.
And that's a callback to the Stark technology from Captain America when he was building the
Yes,
star. That's
I
cool.
missed that. Good call. Yeah, and there are lots of cool callbacks to things, and we'll talk about that when we get to our section on references.
Yes.
But oh yeah, man, that's cool. I think part of why I maybe didn't think of that was because all I could think of was roads. Where we're going, we don't need roads, and that's just like all I could think of as soon as if I see wheels on a car turn up and it starts hovering, Doc Brown is all I
Yeah,
see.
yeah, very true.
Anyway, but I mean, like, it's not. But the production values aren't turning you off to the point where it's like you can't watch the show or
No,
anything.
definitely not. I just hope that the scope widens a little bit as we go
I
forward with the
imagine it
show.
will. I figure they'll give them more of a budget as the show clearly gets as popular as I'm sure it's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, it killed in the ratings, absolutely destroyed. I think it even broke records, for a premiere of a pilot. I haven't looked
Well,
at the numbers, but
it's doing a lot of firsts. This is the first time we've had a TV show based on a record-breaking film that comes out like a year after it. We've never seen
yeah.
anything like this before. That in my recollection, especially that looks as good as this does. That has the budget behind it and it has people behind it that trust it. And also, most importantly, that is produced and written some by the guy that directed the thing it's based on. That never happens.
No,
So,
definitely not.
or almost never. So anyway, that's really exciting. This felt like a consummate Whedon kind of thing. I mean, the thing that I was most I don't know how big of a Whedon fan you are, Dan.
I haven't watched a ton of his television stuff, I have to admit, but I've read quite a bit of what he's done in comic books and stuff.
This I'm giddy because we got Whedon back on TV and it feels like a Whedon show. In my mind, this is like Whedon whatever show season like 16 or whatever. You know, what I mean? Like that's how it feels to me. The Whedon writing is back, and I love that. that one of the writing credits on this was his brother, because when he and Jeb Whedon get together, it seems like their scripts tend to be a little bit sharper, a little bit quicker witted and better. I like his brother's writing almost as much as I like Joss Whedon's writing, and I mean, like, they did Doctor Horrible together, which I
Oh,
love, and
nice. That's a,
so anyway, I thought that was great, and it was really fun. It's a bright show with it's a bright, fun, lighthearted show with some deeper, more adult themes in it, and most importantly, it's a family show. And
yeah,
I love you
exactly.
can sit down with your kids and watch this show. We don't have enough of that on TV, especially for this sort of thing that, like, it's related to superheroes and stuff. So I imagine that's got to help the ratings quite a bit, And Whedon said in interviews when they first started putting this together that this will be a family show. He really wants it to be optimistic and light enough that it makes you think, but you can sit down and watch it with your kids. And he pulled that off. I was so happy with
I
that.
wasn't even thinking about that, but you're absolutely right. I think,
Jason was enthralled.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I think this show is comparable in what it's doing with the 70s Hulk television show, where you could
Oh, great point.
get
Yeah.
dark with that, but there were, if you would go back and watch that show is very fun and lighthearted at points. It's just, it kind of is really heavy in the thematic stuff going through, and you always have the sad piano music at the end and Bruce Banner hitchhiking. Uh, you know,
It's broody, but it's still a family show. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. It's not doing anything that's like not for appropriate for all ages, and I think this is nailing that tone exactly. I mean, it's able to do some more high adventure things because it has a better budget, and that's the best comparison I can make to it is like sort of a fun, well written Saturday morning cartoon in live action, not like with the physics and stuff like that, but it's very all ages approach. It's high. It seems like it's going to be an adventure action kind of show, and we don't have many shows like that on television anymore.
No, so yeah, it's nice. We're getting a little bit of variety. I think it's a cool companion to Arrow in that way, where Arrow gets darker than the show probably will very often.
Yeah,
Although I could see this getting to a rough place. Whedon does have a tendency of doing that some, where he'll start in a lighter place, and as it goes along, it just gets heavier and heavier. And we'll see if that happens in the show. It could, because the more he gets invested in characters he's writing, the more he likes to hurt them a lot.
yeah,
And
which makes
so
for great
we'll see
drama.
what happens.
So I mean,
Now, I will say I'm not latching on to any individual character real hard yet, with the exception of Coulson. And I say that about Coulson because I found him very, very likable. And finally, with him getting this much screen time and being this important to the plot, I have a better understanding of why I'm supposed to think he's so great. Because there were so many people that just loved Coulson in the movies, and I thought he was kind of fun, but I never understood where that fan following came from. And now, finally, I have a reason to latch on to this guy.
and you can understand his relationship with the Avengers a lot more, and I think it makes the fact that they formed because of him. Not that I didn't buy it in the movie, but I never felt like the Avengers were as invested in him as a person, as a friend, that it would
Mm-mm.
drive them into like, you know, being a team just because of his death necessarily. That was one of the reservations I had in the Avengers movie. But when you see him interacting with people in here, you're like, wow, I can see why this guy had individual connections with each of the Avengers character just in who he is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because it's like Coulson understands the superhumans in a way other people don't. Like, he's not afraid of them. He's glad they're around, and he's got an idea of how humans and superhuman people can live together. I love it when he's talking about how it's not the superpowers that they have that make them heroes. It's what they do with them, and it's the same way with anybody else, just to differing degrees. We need to talk about the death thing, because I'm like we should have brought that up already, probably. Okay. So I've already gotten a couple of messages from people where they say, what do you think about the explanation for what happened to Coulson? And I say, well, we don't have one yet. The explanation for what happened to him is given to, just in case anybody didn't pick up on this. And I mean, like, I'm not trying to say anybody's dumb or anything. It's just I didn't pick up on it right away. I mean, like, it took me a little while thinking about it. But the whole deal is, in case you missed it, is that Coulson is told by Mariah Hill and other people that that's how he got that like he was dead for like 40 seconds and then he got brought back, but then they faked his death because Fury wanted to make the Avengers think that he
And
was
they sent him to
dead.
some tropical
And they
location.
sent him to Tahiti,
Yeah,
yeah,
Tahiti.
and they did that just he did that just to try to rile them together as a team. But something else happened to him, and we don't know what. And we'll speculate about that a little bit later. But there's that big line of where Hill, and I love that it's Hill that says it because she was actually there.
Yes.
In Avengers, Hill says, well, he can never know. So something happened that we don't know about, and the explanation is deeper than this, and I imagine will factor really, really hard into his character arc for the season. And I think it might make him whatever the answer is. I predict we'll get to this later, but I predict that it will, knowing the way Whedon likes to write, it will probably make him very conflicted about his optimistic attitude about everything.
Yeah, and that's the challenge that I want to see brought upon this character, obviously. Because his optimism is so refreshing, I need that to come from an organic place in his character. I mean, it's there as sort of a facet of his personality already, but I want to see that as a triumphing thing that's in him innately, you know? Um,
Yeah, and you want to see him have to fight against more cynical kinds of attitudes.
especially in the world we live in today. Yeah, definitely. And the nature of the organization he works for alone, one that could make anybody cynical, just like it does with Ward. Um, so
I thought it was wonderfully intelligent on Whedon's part, and I mean, I kind of expected it would be more complicated than just a quick explanation, but I didn't know if it would be as mysterious as they're making it. I think he's really smart to say, I'm not even going to tell the Avengers fans what exactly happened there yet, because to tell us right away, even if it was a really cool explanation, I think would cheapen that death.
I think so too, and I think it's really elegant for him to give a ambiguous explanation like that just to get the ball rolling and tell a story. I mean, we could have easily spent this entire pilot just explaining Coulson's backstory coming back into the game. Like this could have easily been Coulson just retraining, getting ready to form a team, and then the second episode we bring in all the rest of the cast. I like that it was just sort of a not a throwaway line, but it was in the dialogue explained or lack thereof. What happened.
I mean, it's nice that we have a real premise for a story, and that it also sets up what the ongoing, not just ideas of the show are going to be, but the kind of format of the show, where it's well, we find people that need us because of the way the world has changed because of what happened in Avengers. Let's go ahead and go on to our some of our topics here, Dan. What do you think was the best moment in the episode?
My favorite moment, I picked my favorite gag in the episode, the one where I laughed out loud, because I just wasn't expecting the scene to play out the way it did. Because we saw a little bit of this in the trailers, where Ward is talking to Hill about um, shield and what it means to him, and Coulson steps out from the darkness and says welcome to level 7, and then he's like it's dark over in that corner, I think a bulb's out. I couldn't resist myself. I just cracked up. I thought it was
I
hilarious.
laughed so hard during that part that I missed the next line he said. So when I watched it a second time, I laughed again and that I could be wrong. I don't know, but he read that line as if it was an improv, as if he was improvising it
Yes.
when he says, like It seems to me like it's a very Whedon line to say I just couldn't resist that dark corner, but it seemed almost like an improvisation when he said there was a I think there's a bulb out.
Yeah.
That's great. Like it's already funny, and then he puts this nice little coat on it.
Yeah, and it speaks so much to who Coulson is as a character. Like he's just got this quirky, unassuming, everyday kind of personality to him, even though he's like in this really crazy espionage-filled organization. I don't know. I just think it's a great introduction to who he is as a person.
He is a kid in a candy store, man. He is living out old school 007 with his
Yes,
cars
yes.
and his gadgets and everything. Like the rest of Shield isn't necessarily into all of that, except for the plucky comic relief scientist kids. But who I like to think of as the European Wonder Twins. But um, anyway, okay. My favorite moment, just because it broadsided me so hard, and I laughed at it, and then I realized how important it was. I really love the moment where Coulson gives Ward the truth serum instead of giving it to Sky. I really liked that.
I really liked that too because it that scene not only revealed a lot about Coulson's character, but I think it spoke a lot about Ward and Sky's characters too, like how that all played out. How Ward was talking about how he masks his pain in front of beautiful women to make them believe he's more masculine. Like that says a lot about who he is as a person.
Well, it was also a really Whedon moment too, because he says that, and the first place that my brain went was, wow, that was a little forward. And then immediately he goes, wow, this stuff works fast. What do you think was the worst moment in the episode?
The worst moment. I mean, in general, I just really didn't care for the European Wonder Twins as characters yet. I can
Keep calling him that.
I can sort of understand what Whedon's doing with them, to be fair. And I think what he's trying to do, one of them's a biochemist, and one of them's sort of like a weapons manufacturer, and they have this symbiotic relationship. One of them's about healing and creating things, one of them's about destroying things, and they have a symbiotic relationship. And I feel like that's what he's going to play with is like humanity. Anything they create has the potential to heal or destroy.
I was so irritated with them half the time that I didn't even put all that together. Good job, Dan. I
I mean,
agree with you.
that's what I was thinking through all the irritation because I'm like, hopefully they become endearing later on. But like when they were first introduced, she makes this quip about being compared to Hermione, and I was like, I wasn't initially thinking that when you guys brought her in, but now I'm gonna be thinking about that every time she shows up, and that's annoying. So that was my worst moment, the Hermione quip when she compares herself to Hermione.
Well, my least favorite moment was also about the European Wonder Twins, and it was where the Scottish guy, his name is it's going to take us a while to get used to people's names in this show. Leo, he there was this part. It's not terrible. It was just a joke that didn't work for me. When he is talking to Sky over the comms, and he keeps talking about his equipment, and then he keeps like trying to change the words so that it won't sound like he's talking like it's a sexual thing. It just that didn't play for me.
Yeah, I didn't really care for that either.
I get why it's supposed to be funny. Maybe somebody laughed at that. That's great if you did. I didn't think it was funny. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the whole thing, so I didn't, there wasn't anything where I just went, oh man, So I mean, I really liked the show, but if I have to pick a least favorite moment, because I do, because I came up with this format, and that's my least favorite moment. Real quick, we'll do what's the big idea. This is the part where we'll talk about themes and messages and those sorts of things. We've already mentioned a ton of it already, so we'll just kind of do this briefly. I'll mention a couple things I wrote down, Dan. Obviously, it's dealing a whole lot with the good guys and the bad guys, even though we're in a world of superpowers and superheroes are not always, it's not always to tell who's who. That's a very Whedon thing in pretty much everything he
And a
does.
very
And
Marvel thing, which is so
yeah,
fit.
and I expected that to be here. Obviously, government protection versus control, which is winning out. Are they altruistic? Um, the big thing that resonated with me the most is the idea of you, and this is why I think this is a good premise of a show, and why I don't think it's lame that we don't have regular superheroes in it, because it's about regular people having to live in a world with superheroes in it, and so we're focusing on the regular people, and the idea of how does what happened in Avengers change the geopolitical and cultural landscape, because it's not just that we have superheroes now, it's that we have gods, superheroes, and alien technology all at the exact same time showing up. And what would that do to the world at large and to our country? And people are getting their hands on things they're not prepared for. And then you've got this whole idea with Mike about human significance. People being threatened by what they don't understand, but also things that are more powerful and more gifted than they are. It's like technology, and I really like that Mike even uses that metaphor when he says we're not machines, we're people. This idea of, like technology, we're feeling like we're being replaced by something that is better than us. And then you have this the opposite thing of that, where some humans are kind of proving us too primitive, compared to the gods and the superheroes and the aliens because they're not ready for this technology, and that plays a lot into what Shield was doing, or what Fury was doing in trying to get his hands on the cosmic cube and create a cosmic cube in Avengers. So I really like that all those ideas are kind of coming out of Avengers and being explored more than they did in that movie. The biggest thing I got from this is I'm gonna like Avengers more having watched this pilot.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But anyway, did you pick up on anything I did?
I picked up on all the stuff you had mentioned. The only other thing that I noticed going on with the characters and how Whedon was just juxtaposing them was this trust or distrust in authority, where you have some people who have either lost faith in it, in Sky and Mike, where they've authority has hidden too many things from them. In an attempt to understand the world, they sort of lash out, and they're truth seekers and want to know what's going on, or they feel like authority has dealt them a hand that they can't play, and they have to find any way they possibly can to understand the world more. They blindly trust authority in order to try to understand the world, like Coulson and Ward and the twins, and nobody really knows what's going on. I thought that was one of the big permeating things of this, and how people look at the world, and how nobody can really see the big picture because it's all obscured by authoritarian organizations like this, and what superheroes, and how that would affect the way they do their job and things like that. So that was the other major thematic thing I picked up on, because you have Mike in the factory like getting fired from his job. There's a lot of stuff about like how authority is just every authority figure in this guy's life is screwing him over. Even his wife, the institution of marriage has failed him. The job market in the United States has failed him. The U.S. government has failed him. Like every institution of authority that exists in this country has failed this guy.
Yeah, and even the underground black market thing that he goes to ultimately fails him.
Exactly, exactly. So that was the thing that I picked up on, definitely. I think this show has a lot of ideas going on in it, and you know, anything that makes me think about the world around me in a different way is good in my book. That's something people should be doing.
We'll mention some of the guest stars real quick. We've got a couple of major Whedon alum here. We've got J. August Richards playing Mike, who is one of my favorite actors from Whedon stuff. He played Gunn in all 5 seasons of Angel, starting in about the middle of the first season, and it was really fun to see him here because he played a. Although I got so stoked when I heard Richards was going to be in the show. I got a little bit sad when I found out that he was just a guest star. I hope he comes back, but he's not going to be a regular. And uh, in he was in an episode of Arrow last year, and it was fun to see him, but he played a really two-dimensional bad guy. And so here, it was fun to see him play a much more complex kind of antagonist. I really like that, especially because it turns the whole superhero thing on its head. Like when he at the very beginning, when he saves that woman, you're thinking, okay, this is just your stereotypical birth of a superhero theme, or, kind of thing. And then it's not that at all, and he actually knows her, and yeah, I loved all that. Then you've got Ron Glass, who was my favorite character in Firefly book, and he's the guy who says says to Hill at the beginning, "Oh, he doesn't know, does he?" And that's when she says,
Oh, okay, okay. I knew that guy looked familiar. I couldn't put my finger on where I'd seen him before.
he gets nothing to do really in this episode but say that line, and I'm really hoping that we see him recur throughout the series, and I imagine that we will. Again, he was listed as a guest star. I think he'll be a recurring one. And finally, obviously, Kobe Smulders as Mariah Hill. I wasn't sure if we'd see anybody from Avengers in this. It was really smart to bring her in, and I imagine she'll probably pop in every now and again.
I hope so, because this, if anything, is the place for Maria Hill to shine. Um, you need a Nick Fury-esque character, in my opinion, to be the ultimate um, representation of Shield authority, the person that knows everything that Coulson has to answer to. And if you can't have Samuel L. Jackson, Maria Hill is the person that you have Coulson answering to. So I would love it if after How I Met Your Mother ends, if she would come on as a regular star of this. That'd be fantastic.
I would be very surprised if she didn't.
Yeah, I mean the pay's probably pretty good too, so I would
Yeah,
imagine that they could bring her over with the right offer. And Mike Peterson, I agree with you. I think I had never seen him before. I think he's a great actor. I would not be surprised if after that guy's identity was erased in this, if he becomes Luke Cage in the future. Because just because of the urban-esque background that he has here, they gave him a kid just like Luke Cage has. I would not be surprised if that's who he becomes.
But how would he ever get superpowers?
They could find another way to do it. I mean,
Yeah, sure, certainly. Yeah, I hope he comes back. He was too interesting to just be a one-shot guest
yeah,
star.
exactly. I wasn't so sure if that was what they were doing at the end of the episode, bringing him somewhere where he could start over, because I saw his wife there too, and I thought she had abandoned him for some reason.
Yeah, I didn't really understand what was going
Yeah,
on
I
there
didn't
either.
really understand that because they didn't really expand on it too much.
Wasn't the fact that she abandoned him a lot of his motivation for everything he was doing in the first
Yeah,
place?
exactly.
You know. So anyway, those were the big guest stars I picked up on. I don't know if you wrote anybody else down, but
Those
that was.
I didn't even notice the guy that was talking to Hill that you had mentioned. I only had those two. So yeah, those were the only two I picked up on.
Okay, Dan, did you have any other favorite lines that you wrote down?
Other favorite lines. I did really enjoy. Of course, we had seen this in the trailers, but Ward's little quip about somebody really wanted our initials to spell out Shield. I thought that was really clever.
Yeah, I liked it in the context of this, but it gets a little bit sticky because of Iron Man. Because you've got him, you've got Coulson going all the way through Iron Man, calling it the thing that the acronym is, but they haven't come up with the acronym yet. And then at the end, he's like, "And we're Shield," and it's like they were trying to come up with another. And then here, it's like we named it Shield because, or we came up with Shield because we just wanted that to fit into Shield. So I mean, like that's
I
kind of
don't
at
know if he was
odds.
being serious. I thought maybe he was joking, but
No, I know, I get that. I get that he's joking, but then the show's drawing attention to something that was stupid to me in Iron Man.
oh,
And that's all I'm saying. I thought it was stupid in Iron Man that they didn't immediately have that and go, "Oh yeah, Shield." That's what you see what I'm saying.
yeah.
Like that whole running gag in Iron Man never worked for me in the first place. So when I saw that line, I was like, "Oh," and they're reminding me of this thing that I didn't like.
Oh, sure.
I wrote a few down. I really liked "It's an Origin Story."
Yeah, that was a good line. Wait, before you jumped out the window.
Yeah, I thought that was great because I expected it to be your generic superhero origin story, and it's not that at all. I really liked that. The Battle of New York was the end of the world. This is the new world.
Yeah, that was a good line too.
I also wrote down "Nobody is Nobody." You mentioned that, and at the end, the tide is rising. Good
Yeah.
stuff. That's such a Whedon kind of way to book in a show like that. It opens with her being this ominous voice of "we're going to bring down Shield," and it ends with the guy who's our face of Shield in the show throwing it back at her, saying the tide is rising, and he's now brought her into the organization. Great stuff. Good
Yes,
good
definitely.
book. Yeah. Do you have any other ones?
No, I didn't write any more down, but Whedon dialogue. It's hard to pick a favorite line of his because there's so many great ones. Um, but yeah, you pretty much covered all the ones that I really enjoyed.
Let's move on to some comic book references. So I'm sure you caught Journey into Mystery.
I did the Thor reference. I caught the unregistered gifted mention that Maria Hill had referencing the upcoming Superhero Registration Act in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'm sure we're going to
Oh,
get that soon, especially with the conflict they set up in the Avengers with Cap and Tony as being, antagonistic towards each
yeah.
other. The other thing I picked up on, of course, was the obligatory Spider-Man reference. With great power comes a bunch of crazy crap or whatever she said.
I could have done without that, but
Yeah, I could have done without it too.
it's just the obvious thing to do.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
whatever, it's cool. I mean, I get what Whedon was doing. He was probably saying, or whoever wrote that line, was probably thinking, well, we can't have Spider-Man in this universe. We might as well reference it. But it's a little obligatory.
Yeah, and
All this.
then the centipede drug that they were using was very similar to the mutant growth hormone, which we've seen in Marvel over the years. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and obviously this isn't just comic book reference, but referencing Avengers. I was so impressed by just how much movie stuff influenced the story. We've got the Chitari thing. We've got How was Extremis in this? That's so cool, man. Because you have to assume that they had to write this just after that movie was out, or maybe it hadn't even been released yet. I mean, like we're firing on all cylinders now, trying to get this continuity together in a way that we weren't back when we were making like stingers for movies that ultimately don't play with the rest of the thing. I mean, like it's working better now.
Right.
But yeah, Extremis, I got giddy. I was like, that's cool, man. We've referenced Iron Man, we've referenced the superheroes, the super soldier serum, just everything. Yeah, it's fantastic.
I was very impressed that they were able to put as many comic book and movie references in the show and not make it feel like just fan service, the television episode, you know? Um,
Yes, exactly.
like there were just little things like, Coulson was like, "Oh, he's almost as good as Romanov," like in regular conversation. Like, but you believe that's things they would say because obviously Black Widow is the top agent at S.H.I.E.L.D. She's the one that everyone would be competing against to be better than.
Yeah, okay, let's go ahead and go on to predictions now. And yeah, I wrote this as predictions and hopes. So things that you think might happen or things that you kind of want to see happen. Let's go ahead and start with the Coulson thing. Okay, so we know that it's more complicated than the explanation they give. What do you think it is?
I think he's a life model decoy.
Okay, so you're not going with the Vision theory.
I mean, he still could be a life model decoy and become the
And
Vision because they're both robots. But
yeah, true.
um, because then you could connect that artificial technology with Ultron in the second movie too.
I think you're right. I think that's probably what it is. I wrote down a couple other potential possibilities in case they're thinking that's what we would expect them to do. One of them is maybe somebody makes a deal with an evil force to have him resurrected.
That could be it because we know, there's people like Loki running around where you can make deals.
And that would play nicely with the dealing with forces humanity's not ready for motif.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
And then the other thing I thought was maybe it has something to do with the cosmic cube and when they were trying to recreate that.
I have other predictions related to the cosmic cube that we'll talk about after, but that's
Okay,
definitely a
cool.
possibility.
Another thing I wrote down is so now we'll just go into general predictions. I think the plucky scientists are likely to have a romance if they're. I mean like you earlier before we started recording called them twins. I don't think they're actually related.
I just kind of assumed that because they had such a symbiotic relationship.
I do feel like to not be creepy, we'll have to stop calling them the European Wonder Twins if they start dating. But yeah, I think those two are likely to date because they're already kind of playing up the thing with like Leo being a little bit enamored with Sky. I don't think they'll put them together, so I think they'll probably try to have them have crushes on other people before they finally have the kind of the kind of obvious, oh yeah, we've been working together all this time, we didn't realize we were attracted to each other, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think that'll happen, and then I think Whedon will break that relationship up in the most heart wrenching way possible and make us actually like them before it happens because that's a very Whedon thing to do. Anyway, what other predictions do you have, Dan?
My big prediction is, and I think if you know like your Shield comics, which I'm not a Shield expert or anything, but I know a little bit enough about it. That terrorist organization that Sky is working for is Hydra in disguise. They talk about the rising tide. Hydra is in mythology is an animal that lives in the water. Coulson talks about not cutting off the head of the
Oh,
centipede, which is the slogan for Hydra. If you cut off one head, two more will grow in its place.
so you think Centipede is Hydra in disguise?
Yes, and the drug that they created is creating people with superpowers, just like the Red Skull was trying to do when he founded Hydra.
Yes, I bet you're absolutely right about that.
And Hydra is the main enemy of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the comics, so it makes sense. I think that's where they're going with it.
The first thing I thought when they first started talking about an organization before they even called it anything, the first thing I thought of was AIM. But
AIM is a possibility too, because they're a big S.H.I.E.L.D. enemy. Uh,
I think it's more likely to be what you're doing, what you're talking about, because it sounds like they seeded some things I did not catch the cut off the headline. That's really cool.
yeah, Coulson says it at the end when they're getting into the car. He's talking about, oh, he's like, oh, we didn't cut off the head of the.
I didn't even put two and two together with that. Good call.
So
Um,
yeah.
who do you think is the most likely Avenger to make a cameo in this show if it ever happens?
Probably Hawkeye or Black Widow. I would say I mean, those are the two characters I'd like to see in the show, but the thing is, those
Right.
actors are too big.
Yeah, here's the thing. What I wrote down, what I think Hawkeye is the most likely, because I don't think he is anything like as popular as anybody else in that movie.
No, I
Um,
mean he
I
should
think,
be because I love Hawkeye, but
but what I'm saying is that actor, he's not that big of a name compared to everybody else in that
he's an
cast.
Oscar winner. I mean,
Is he?
yeah,
Okay, that I
for the
didn't
For
know.
the Hurt Locker, and he was in The Town too, Ben Affleck's Oscar-winning film. So yeah, he's pretty big.
How much money does he command, though? You know what I mean? Like,
I think he must make pretty.
is he pretty? Okay, all right.
I'm
Well,
not sure what he gets paid.
wow. Okay, I'm glad you knew that because I'm sorry I didn't know that. I had never heard of him before Avengers. I should have looked that up. I didn't realize he was an Oscar winner.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
he's been attached to a lot of big films recently.
Never mind the stupid thing I said, but given that, I think Bruce Banner is a likely candidate
Oh, I would love that.
because you don't have to have him Hulk out just because he's on the show, and I don't think he would be that hard to get.
Yeah, I don't. I think Ruffalo would be down for something like that. I would hope that they can at least get a Nick Fury cameo per season. I'd like to see Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury come out.
I hope so because the thing you got to wonder if you have a whole Shield show where Nick Fury never shows up,
Yeah,
you got to wonder what they're
exactly.
doing. They should have called it like Shield the B team if he never shows up anywhere, because he should be there with them,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if that's the thing about this show. I mean, like, if they hadn't cast Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury in the movies, I would ideally like the show to have Nick Fury as one of, if not the main focus of the show. But if we can't, have it, I mean, Coulson is a good substitute for that. I like the character enough.
But I also think that you're right about what you said earlier, that it's very possible that Maria Hill will end up being one of the main characters in the show eventually. And if that happens, I don't know that we wouldn't just be completely enthralled with that, depending on what they do with it.
I mean, yeah, I mean, there's precedence for her and Fury butting heads in the Avengers movie, and we know that Maria Hill doesn't agree with everything Fury does in the comics, and eventually takes over his position and does things he doesn't agree with
Yeah.
as director of Shield. So it would be interesting to see her sort of climb up the organizational ladder in this show, and then eventually in the Avengers movie maybe take over for Fury if he gets outlawed or something, because that happens to Nick Fury all the time with Shield. He goes rogue, he gets outlawed, all those sorts of things. So
Well, that's everything I had. Did you have any other predictions?
I don't have any other predictions. No, I'm just really looking forward to see where all this goes. It's really interesting.
We're going to end the show every week with some trivia. I hope you wrote something down, Dan.
I did.
Okay, cool. So each week, Dan and I are going to come up with a trivia question of something neat and hopefully somewhat obscure, maybe sometimes. Out of, I think mine's pretty easy, but whatever. Out of it, and each of us will give a trivia question, and then we will reveal our answers at the beginning of the next show. So feel free to write your answers down in the comments if you want to, or just see if you can guess it. Dan, what's your trivia question? Go ahead.
My trivia question is. After Nick Fury's first series that he appeared in, Nick Fury and his Howling Commandos, was canceled, which Marvel anthology book did Nick Fury co-feature in with what character? So there's two parts. Which character and which series did he co-feature in after his initial series was canceled?
Oh wow, my initial idea was for the trivia to be like something that was in the episode.
Oh, okay.
But that's cool. The question I picked is who are the only two Avengers to be mentioned by name in the episode? I think nearly everybody gets mentioned, but only two of them are actually mentioned by name.
That's very true. I'm going to have to think about that one.
Yeah, actually, come to think of it, okay, there's one that is almost sort of that way by proxy, but I'm going to tell you what it is right now because this is not who I'm looking for. I'm one of the answers is not Iron Man because Stark Tower is mentioned, but Stark himself is not mentioned.
Okay.
So there are two Avengers and that are actually straight up mentioned by their real names. What are those two?
I think I know them as I'm thinking about it, but I'll talk with you after we stop.
Yeah, absolutely, totally cool. Anyway, well, everybody, thanks a lot for listening. Sure, hope you enjoyed the show. We'll try to make these a little bit less long moving along. We had a lot of things to talk about, this being the pilot. But anyway, that's kind of the format for our show. Hope you liked it, and we'll see you again for the second episode next Friday. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Dan.